Everyone, this is Mitch Schwartzman. And today we're going to be talking about training aging athletes. Is age just a number? Would be my subtitle, and something I just want to kind of keep in mind, and that we're going to challenge that a little bit today and explore some interesting ways to kind of stay young and to at the same time improve performance in athletic endeavors. There's several reasons I think that exploring aging athletes is an important topic. One of the reasons is for our younger workforce, there will be a great influx of older individuals. So our abilities to assist and care for them may actually, there's a good chance that that'll end up being a bigger role in some of our careers, especially with the physical therapy. Those of you pursuing physical therapy, there's going to be just a greater number of Americans in those older age brackets, and that you'll probably be dealing with. So I thought particularly there'd be some great things for you to be thinking about. And then what I'm predicting, or what I think that I'm observing the beginning stages of, is a greater focus on sort of the anti-aging movement and an interest in longevity. So not just increased lifespan as such as living longer, but an increased health span such as feeling good longer. So I think that it's in our benefit to focus on this population, because I think a lot of us will end up working with them, and some of us may end up only working with them. And to quote Orson Welles, old age is the only disease you don't want to be cured of. So he thought, hey, old age, there's a badge of honor in that. That's something we should strive for. We should hope to achieve it. And then on the other quote is Tom Robbins. I think science has begun to demonstrate that aging is a disease. If it is, it can be cured. So viewing this quote, and honestly, there's quite a few individuals in sort of this space or this field who feel like that this is a disease that can be cured, and that many other diseases such as heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, these are basically spin-offs or derivatives of a disease that actually is aging. And so we're going to challenge that a little bit and explore it a little bit as well. So what is aging? We're going to dive into these four areas. Chronological versus biological. So chronological, okay, what does your birth certificate say? Versus biological, how old do you really appear? What are your performance levels? What are your biological sort of milestones at? Lifespan versus health span, sort of living longer versus feeling good longer. Energy and appearance, such as maybe energy-wise, not only your ability to go out and perform athletic events, but your ability to have energy throughout the day. And then appearance, things such as, well, we're going to talk a little bit about fat loss or fat accumulation. In this discussion, we will not be diving into gray hairs and wrinkles and things like that, but that's something you could certainly spend a lot of time researching and collecting education on. And then mentality, that might be the most important one, but for our purposes today, we'll only be barely mentioning it basically and just skimming the surface. Okay, chronological versus biological age. If you haven't heard of telomeres yet, I think the best metaphor that's going around is, think about an aglet. An aglet is a small sheath that's plastic or metal at the end of a shoelace. So if you've ever seen a Tom Cruise movie called Cocktails, I thought this was called a flugel binder until I looked it up for this presentation, but I suppose it's called an aglet. And that is essentially what these telomeres are. All right. When we're born, when we're babies, our telomeres are nice and long. And what that does is when our cells replicate, it helps the cell maintain its integrity. And each time that cell replicates, apparently that telomere gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And the shorter it gets, the more likely it is to have some sort of mutation. And when those cells start to mutate, it tends not to be good for us, particularly with cancer, but just all kinds of just misfirings and not working efficiently, not working as well as possible. So long telomeres tend to be indicative of young cells. Okay, so what we really want to do is we want to keep those aglets, we want to keep our shoelaces looking good. All right, we want to keep our chromosomes in our cells. When they replicate, we want them to hold their function and hold their DNA as a mirror image, so it's high quality and it looks as good as it did when we were very, very young, or the day we were born, basically. And the way we can do that, help maintain that telomere, is an enzyme, telomerase. So that telomerase counteracts telomere shortening and can even add length to the protective structures. Okay, so those telomeres, you can actually increase them with the right behaviors and habits. Okay, so there's a group that went out and did a little bit of testing, and they found that the cardio was more beneficial for telomerase than strength training. Doesn't mean strength training is not beneficial. We'll explore that a little bit more today, but I think a profound point or bullet to be made in today's discussion is how to maintain and increase telomerase levels in the hopes of boosting or maintaining our telomere length. So the endurance and high intensity training groups raise their telomerase significantly. It says resistance training does not improve healthy aging. Well, I think in the aspect, it means, the aspect of your telomerase levels and in comparison to the more cardiovascular based training, whether that was endurance training or the high intensity. So there's an endurance group and a high intensity group. All right, let's see what's going on here. So look at our last bullet here. If you want to kind of follow with me here, they had two groups. One group did the endurance sessions of continuous running, and the other group, they would warm up and they would do 4 bouts of high intensity running, alternate with slower running. Okay, and a cool down. All right. So those two groups, you had the interval group and the endurance group. Those both had a spike and great results regarding telomerase, whereas our resistance training group, not so much. Again, there are great benefits to resistance training and aging, just not so much with telomerase, and in comparison to maybe just a running group or running, biking, swimming groups. Now, keep in mind, you could probably fashion some resistance training that would create cardiovascular stimulus. Think about sort of our CrossFit populations. There's lots of risks that come with that, in the orthopedic and musculoskeletal issues. However, if you were just really determined to do resistance exercises in a circuit fashion that sort of mimicked some cardio, you could probably achieve it, some some easy go-tos might be sort of kettlebell swings, or a lot of like band work that's going to be a little bit safer on maybe some like orthopedic issues. But that's up to you, and I don't want to dive into that too much right now. Okay, mitochondrial function. So our mitochondria, I think it's almost like a cliche kind of joke that everybody thinks of it as the powerhouse of the cell, which is great. That's correct. To my understanding, that's how you want to think of it. So when we think about your chronological versus biological age, well, think about these young kids. I've got a 4 and a 2, almost 4-year-old and a 2-year-old right now, and they are just balls of energy. But they've just got these fresh, brand new mitochondria that are working. They're working overtime. They're doing great. And the older we get, there seems to be a little bit of mitochondrial dysfunction, and that's what we're going to explore in the next few slides. And that's the reason why older individuals tend to have less energy than younger individuals, is that their mitochondria are just they're not as numerous, and they're not as effective and efficient. Okay, sorry for the awkward silence there. I was just kind of find my place. All right, look at this. However, as we age, our mitochondria replicate less readily. That means there are fewer mitochondria to produce energy. As we age, so look at the years down here, this number of mitochondria available, and it's not looking so good, okay? So what we got there, it's always kind of trending downward, but you see the line they chose to really emphasize is kind of that 55 to 70 marker. All right, so it's gonna get rough. The older we get, it looks like we could be in trouble. Less and less mitochondria. That means less and less energy. What's going on here? All right, so as we have fewer mitochondria, they try to compensate by a process of hypertrophying. But as they get larger, they're going to be less efficient and produce more damaging free radicals than their more youthful, more numerous, and smaller progenitors. So these larger, less numerous mitochondria are just not going to get the job done. They're not going to be great. All right, you're putting like a big lineman at the wide receiver slot. It's not going to go so great. Okay, people are not doing their job. All right, so this one gets a little wordy. There's some substrates and things like that we're not really going to focus on too much. I would have to dive in a little bit more than this to just do anything besides regurgitate it. But essentially, the enzymes are changing, and the number of cells that lack the enzyme is going to increase. So we've got less mitochondria, we've got bigger mitochondria that are less effective, and we're losing our enzymes that are helping the mitochondria do their work. It's a decline that's hurting our energy levels. All right. For now, that's our basic understanding of what's happening biologically as we age, why we might have less energy, and if and when you become parents and your kids are driving you crazy, it's not because they're doing it on purpose. They've just got so much energy from those awesome mitochondria that they've got, those young mitochondria. They can't help it. They're just brimming with energy, okay? All right, but good news is there are things you can do. I'm going to let you guys read through this. Interval training tends to increase mitochondrial capacity. All right. I'll let you all read through it. But if you're going to do something to boost your mitochondrial capacity, both in the number of mitochondria as well as the effectiveness of mitochondria, interval training seems to be the way to go based on this study. All right, sticking with mitochondrial function, bringing in some sort of more quotes and more research if you care to look into it. Chronic exercise endurance increases number and density and function. All right, so we like that. So I have one individual, Peter Attia, who we'll visit with later, he sort of compares it to your bank account. Okay, he compares doing this cardio throughout our lives as submitting money or depositing money into our bank accounts. Is that the more money we deposit, the more money we end up having. So he sort of looks at endurance exercise as a similar facet when it comes to mitochondrial function, is that as we do cardio over the years, we are making deposits that will help boost our mitochondria, both their number and their function. And this is another study that's promoting high intensity interval training. And again, basically sort of saying the same thing. And I really recommend you check this out. It's also going to talk a little bit about some magnesium supplementation and how that's going to benefit your mitochondrial biogenesis. And then also that Found My Fitness is with a personality, Dr. Rhonda Patrick. She's awesome. She dives into some great stuff. I really recommend checking out her website. She's got a good podcast, and she also is a great guest on many other podcasts. So there's some resources for you. Okay, so we have that telomeres and telomerase, and we also dove in a little bit on mitochondria. And two other issues that we're just going to briefly talk about. I really trust that this population that's listening to this video is familiar with this. Would be sarcopenia and osteopenia. So cause of sarcopenia, testosterone. As we age, our testosterone levels go down. We're going to revisit that soon. Physical activities tends to go down. Okay, so again, think about as you're aging and those mitochondria decrease not only in number but in effectiveness, you're going to have less energy, so you're naturally going to be less active. When we're teenagers, we might work out, we might have gym class in high school, and maybe a sport practice after that, and maybe go shoot hoops or something like that after that sport practice with friends. And as we age and get to your maybe mid 30s and 40s, a day like that would kind of wear you out. That'd be a really unique day. Whereas when you're half that age, you don't think twice about it. Nutritional deficiencies. So we won't be spending much time on nutrition today. Again, super important, but not the focus of today's discussion. So nutritional deficiencies, and then think about aging, just think about maybe having some gut issues and a more sensitive gastrointestinal tract and not being able to take down the amount of nutrition that you did in your younger years. So maybe the metabolism slows down and you need to take in less food overall, or maybe there's some GI distress or something like that. And then just, as we go along, our system just runs into different issues. Rheumatoid arthritis is one of many things that may reduce our physical output, which might drive sarcopenia. We haven't defined sarcopenia yet. Sarcopenia is a loss of muscle mass, okay? Osteopenia is a reduction in density in bone density. All right, so it's not quite osteoporosis, but it's a step away from normal bone density. So same thing happens to astronauts when they go into outer space. That decreased stimulus from gravity and force and exertion and torque on the bones will cause the bones to donate their calcium for the bones into the energy, or not into the energy system, but just into the cellular activity, and our bones will reduce in density. So one of the things they're going to do with astronauts before they go into outer space and once they come back is to check their bone density and to train accordingly to develop it. And I thought it would be a worthwhile endeavor to kind of take a look at this unique population that's now being basically highlighted or presented in some of our older CrossFit athletes. So I kind of chose that population just because you're able to observe a little bit of everything from endurance, strength, some power, and you're able to kind of see what they're doing at an advanced age. So never before in history have we really had such a clear data set on some older athletes. And this is a very small population. However, with the right training and habits, maybe more and more individuals could be doing some things along these lines. So Dave Hippensteel, 65 years young, 3-time Master CrossFit Games champion. So it looks like he got some wins 2016 to 2018. So 65 minus those years puts him, looks like he's about 60 years old in 2016. I'm not sure exactly when all these numbers are from, but you got to imagine that he's over 55 for all these numbers. So take a look at those numbers and just imagine that he's pretty impressive here. So he's doing things that a man half his age would be pretty proud to do. So pretty darn impressive, and a great indicator or proof that things are very possible at an older age. So not that we all need to be pursuing this high level world-class fitness. However, it's impressive, and Dave Hippensteel shows us it is possible. And not to be outdone by the boys, here is Susan Clark, who is a 63 years young, 5-time Masters CrossFit champion. Look at all those wins. She's been kicking butt for the last near decade here. She's got 5 wins over the years. And I would say, ladies, check these numbers out to compare, but even fellas, she's doing great. We need to keep an eye on it too as well. But yeah, just very impressive, and a great role model, shall we say, role model of things that are possible. Great nutrition and training. So these people's chronological age might put them in the 60-year-old age brackets, but biologically, look at some of the numbers that they are producing. Look at some of the strength numbers and endurance numbers that they're producing. That would sort of biologically be an indicator that they are in a younger age bracket, which is probably what we all strive for a little bit. On the other hand, I pulled some data points. These are 11. There's a list of 11 reasons why you might need to be talking about assisted living. So think about maybe grandma and grandpa, maybe mom and dad, whoever it is. But at some point, this is the circle of life as we have historically known it, is at some point we start to lose our faculties and might have some issues. So when I think about our side of things, recent falls, so a great indicator that I've heard about is when an individual falls but loses the ability to get back up unassisted. So if we think about how much that has to do with strength, at some point, to us younger individuals, the act of standing up is something that happens without thought. But you take away mitochondria for a few decades, and you add in sarcopenia for a few decades, and eventually you become low energy and very weak. And the act of standing up may feel like a monumental task that maybe 50 or 60 years earlier, maybe that individual was lifting a few hundred pounds with the same amount of effort. So just something to think about. And a great motivator for us all to stay strong as we age. All right, so we look at over the last 12,000 years or so, the years of life expected at birth. Okay, so up until basically, let's see if that's 1,000, that might be 1,500, so maybe that's 1750, maybe until 1750, pardon me, a huge amount of the population was dying out around age 25. And so if you notice with that long history, there are quite a few people that believe age 25 is selected as an average, and that our bodies are really designed to last till about age 25, 35. And at that point, it's expected that we have passed our genetic material on. And like most organisms on the planet, once that's done, we've sort of fulfilled our purpose. Now, all of a sudden, we spend 500 years, let's see, maybe that's starting to become more like 3 generations, 3 to 4 generations in 100 years. So that's 15 or 20 generations later, which is not so much when you're talking about evolution. Now, all of a sudden, we are in the mid-70s, but we're not designed to do that. So our biology gets us to here, and sort of our technology and our innovation is getting us up to here. Our biology has not caught up for that back 3/4 of, back 3/4 or 2/3 of living that we're doing now. Even in 1900, let's see, ladies were living till 36. The guys were sort of just averaging 34. 1950, so 53 and 51. And 20 years ago, it was like 71 and 67. And 20 years after that, it has increased as well a little bit. So things are trending in the right direction. However, keep in mind, nature is really just taking care of us for this first 25 years, maybe 35 years. Other than that, things tend to decrease in function after sort of that 25 to 35 window. So what are we going to do about it, right? Just thought some interesting individuals, sort of some guest world record holders. These 4 ladies all living till about 120, give or take a couple of years. Since we didn't have any males in the top 4, I just wanted to find a male for us, and we did find one fella who made it 116 years. Wow, super impressive. So again, there are some individuals who believe that aging is a disease that we can cure. And one of their pillars in their argument is that there are many animals on the planet that are living substantially longer than humans. And one of which, and the longest living mammal, is the bowhead whale, which can live for 200 years or more. So, so there's research going into what's so special about these animals. What are they doing different with their biology that we can mimic, imitate, and utilize to increase our own lifespans? And I think about in the lifespan versus health span. So we know we want to increase our lifespan, but what about our health span? Okay, because do we really want to live to 80 and then just grind it out for the next 40 to 60 years just to live that long life? While you're in an assisted care facility and maybe you're hooked up to machines and you're in pain, or do we want to have quality of life? So something interesting I came across is that individuals who are living, these centenarians, these individuals who are living past the 100-year marker, it actually tends to be that we've kind of got a good summary down here. Let's check out that last bullet there. That the healthcare expenses in the last year of life may be lower for centenarians than for non-centenarians. So it seems to be that those individuals are actually going the distance and surpassing the 100-year barrier. What they're actually doing is they're maintaining their health span long enough to boost their lifespan. So individuals who are unfortunately dying earlier on tend to be spending more time in medical care and needing healthcare, as opposed to those people that just sort of seem to have, air quotes, it, and are able to make it longer. So what we want to do is not assume that a longer life means more time with medical care, but the right habits and right decision making is sort of surpass that window in maybe the 70 to 100-year gap, and try to surpass that and make it a little bit further. And what they're finding is that I'll just call it suffering, the medical suffering tends to actually be shorter in those super age, I'll call them centenarian super ages. So there's a sort of unexpected benefit to just making it so far, and that you're actually suffering a little bit less, medically speaking. Okay, we mentioned testosterone earlier when we were discussing sarcopenia. And testosterone can be linked to all sorts of things: muscle mass, energy levels, lower rates of disease. It tends to be a good indicator of health. So take a look here. Our over age, we tend to have less and less testosterone. So that's going to lead to that sarcopenia, which then that lowering of muscle mass can then lead to other issues as well. This is a little bit off topic, but just something I thought that was interesting. They have been finding that testosterone levels over the decades have been lowering. So we may not actually have as much testosterone in our bodies now as our parents did at the same age. There's different theories on why that is. Maybe whether it's lower quality food or too much time on social media, not enough sleep. There's a battery of reasons why. However, just sort of a side note, I think really just take a look at that chart on the left and just understand that as we age, our testosterone decreases. And I don't think I don't even need to annotate this one, okay? I'm really tempted to, but I'll keep my little sketching off of this one. As we age, cortisol is going to rise, okay? What does cortisol do? It's sort of an indicator of stress levels, and probably most popularly known for helping store fat, boost fat storage. All right, sticking to hormones, melatonin. As we age, melatonin decreases, and as melatonin is so vital and crucial to our sleeping patterns, as it gets down here, what do you think is going to happen to your sleeping patterns with such crummy melatonin levels? Yeah, you're probably going to have crummy sleep habits too. And when you've got crummy sleep habits, what starts to happen? You're going to start to have more disease. You're going to have less muscle mass and less energy. It's a vicious cycle, right? Okay, just focusing on energy here. We just talked about the decreased melatonin and less sleep. And we've also already covered lower mitochondria. So if you've got less mitochondria in your body and you had a bad night's sleep for the previous decade, how much energy do you think you're really going to have? Okay, as we age, there actually tends to be a thinning of the skin. So as people are getting into their 60s and 70s, that skin is going to be just a little bit more, easier to tear. I'm sure there's a better word for it, but it's just easier to tear and a little bit more susceptible to damage. And part of the reason for that is that there's going to be less fat, less subcutaneous fat, just underneath the layer skin. And that's actually going to start to get stored more viscerally. And visceral fat tends to cause us more health issues. Put this one out to make sure we take a look at that. The gradual relative loss of peripheral fat in aging humans may in part result from a deficit in adipogenesis, which may be linked to inflammation and increased release of pro-inflammatory cytokines from fat tissue. Okay, so we're decreasing our adipogenesis. That's going to be sort of related to some of that subcutaneous fat or adipose fat. Okay, aging is associated with increased inflammation and metabolic disease, including the accumulation of visceral fat stored in the abdominal cavity, which is thought to contribute to inflammation. So again, part of a vicious cycle, right? There's an arrow, there's an arrow, there's another arrow. So if you forgot what a cycle looks like, it might look like that, 3 arrows in a circle. So appearance-wise, you may see maybe more veins in the arms and legs because the subcutaneous fat has kind of gone away, but you also may see more heart attacks and issues in the internal organs because of because of visceral fat being stored closer to the organs. As far as appearance goes, I'm not going to talk about it too much, but the longer you're on the planet, if your posture stinks and you have chronic issues there, you may want to address those. So you can revisit our discussion on common chronic postural issues and possible solutions. I do realize that slide has the same sort of slide structure as the one we're currently on, so it's a little bit trippy and might feel like you are having some vision issue, but really it's just that slide caught my eye for both of these presentations. Address those chronic postural issues especially as we get older. Okay, think about getting older, having the sarcopenia, so the less muscle mass, and the osteopenia, so the reduced bone mass, with a poor posture and carrying yourself poorly all the time. Think about how that will just wear on the body. Doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun, does it? Mentality. Yeah, we've got so much to discuss today. I'm only going to brush on this briefly. There's just so much research and literature on the importance of having goals. And so there's one. Goals might be like to travel to a new place or to live to see your great granddaughter's wedding or whatever it is. Interests. So I'm hoping to live at least twice as long as I've lived now. And who knows what my interests are going to be. I'm not interested in the same things I was in, I don't know, middle school. So I've collected some new interests and things like that. Social life. I don't know what to say about how it's going to be when a large chunk of your childhood friends have passed away. I'm sure there's just very interesting challenges that come with living into your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s. Little things like they talk about how important it is to have a pet around and how individuals with pets live longer, and positive mentality. So that seems to be one, like as our bodies are breaking down, maybe we're having some mental issues, just maintaining, clinging to a positive mindset seems to be sort of a no-brainer. All right, one of them drop in a picture of these guys, okay? Some of these individuals have been starring in action movies for 50 years and maintaining certain habits that have allowed them to do so. So it probably definitely helps to have a lot of wealth and resources. But when you really think about it, those individuals' resources are probably just instructing them to take care of their bodies. And that's probably a large part of what they do. I mean, Mr. Stallone is kind of a action hero for the last, Rocky came out in 1975. So almost 50 years ago. And he's been in how many movies? And he's kind of built his career on his body. But the rest of these guys all kind of have the action hero setup going on. They built their careers on it, and who knows how long they're going to last. But you got to admit that that's very impressive to see them, even though it's not real. It's not real to see them running around and fighting crime or doing whatever they're doing. The fact that they are able to portray that, there's something impressive about that. So I couldn't help myself but steal this slide and drop it in here because these guys are just sort of redefining what is possible in their age group, and they're doing it in blockbuster, well, maybe made for TV movies, but arguably blockbuster stage. So I couldn't help but drop that in there, just point that out, and challenge all of you to do the same. Recently, Coach Louis Simmons passed on, but this is an individual who dedicated his life to strength training and spent right around 50 years just challenging his body physically and sort of tearing it down with their bone breaks and surgeries and things like that. But I just wanted to include him in this slide. And basically challenge all of us to A, be passionate about what we do, and B, take care of our bodies. So even with, you can see the tattoos and you can see that he's a thicker individual. I don't think he was living his life to live as long as possible, but he's probably spent a lot of it trying to be as strong as possible. But even that probably had some good carryover in making him last to 74 years. So just wanted to give a little shout out to Louis Simmons, who just recently passed. And again, challenge all of us to be passionate about what we do and to push our bodies and whether you're pushing your body to be a powerlifter or to live to be 120, I just wanted to kind of set out the gauntlet for each of us to pursue those goals. Peter Attia is a personality that I have been learning a lot from, and I think he's going to be a front runner in this field of longevity for the next little while. He's a heart surgeon who has also been involved in some Wall Street business. So he's kind of a polymath in both med school and as well as finance, being a medical professional as well as a finance leader. And now his business and his focus has gone to longevity. So I've included some links to some resources. And I just want to discuss some of the notes that he's made. So he talks about having a high VO2 score as being one of the best indicators for living longer. So he says that having a upper percentile of those a decade younger than you helps you have a 5 times increase in disease reduction. Okay, so means you're 5 times more likely not to have disease and not to have death. Okay, so pursuing a high VO2 max, and what he recommends to do for that is to spend 3 hours a week in this zone 2 training, which we will discuss more momentarily, and then 1 to 2 VO2 max high intensity workouts, wherein you do 4 minutes elevated, 4 minutes decreased rest, and you're putting that on repeat. Okay, so that's one of the 10 items that he discusses as being important. And he discusses using one of his favorite modalities is a fan bike or an air bike like that. And I think he mentions liking that because once your legs get burnt out and tired, you can just switch to your arms, and you can sort of challenge your heart at just a whole new level. It's something, think about running so hard on land. When you get exhausted enough, you kind of need to slow down. Well, here you're sitting down already and you can just switch to your arms. Or if you're in the water and you swam so hard to hyperventilate, you might start to inhale water, But anyways, this is his modality of choice. He talks about the importance of strength, and the examples he gives is for 40-year-olds, they have males be able to do a body weight bar hang for 2 minutes, and females, pardon my typo there, belongs in there. Females be able to do it for 90 seconds. And the younger you are than that, the longer you should be holding on. And as of the creation of this slideshow, I was able to find sort of a recommended weekly protocol where he's doing strength for three times a week, aerobic efficiency, which is that slower zone 2 work, and then anaerobic performance, which is that VO2 max training about 2 times a week. Okay, so I just wanted to bring this up briefly. Okay, looking at zone 2, what are we really looking at? We're looking at about 60 to 70% of heart rate in that 40 to 80 minute window. Again, previously with Dr. Attia, he's mentioning either 45 sessions per week or 3 60-minute sessions per week. Benefits: it improves basic endurance, helps recovery. It says easy breathing, light sweating. So you're going to be able to hold a conversation, a slightly impaired conversation. then when it's time to do your VO2 max training, you are up in here in zone 5. So you're sort of skipping this zone, these zones in here. You sort of live in this zone down here. So a big recommendation is to majority, about 80% of your time in this zone 2 and about 20% of your time in that zone 5. Again, looking at conditioning styles, you got intervals, you've got long, slow distance. And yes, you could, I'm sure you could interplay it in other ways, but just be thinking about how you want to drive your telomerase and your mitochondria. So be thinking about how you want to be challenging those items. And if you return to our work capacity lecture, you'll get a better idea of some of the physiological things that are happening to your heart and your cardiovascular system. So that could easily be discussed on this lecture, but I thought it would just be easy just to remind everyone that we have a work capacity lecture in the past that can be easily accessed. Okay, should we be pursuing hypertrophy or strength or other? I believe most individuals would agree that strength is your most important because we want that function. We want to be able to get up off the floor. We want to help do our strength training so our bones stay strong. However, the benefits of hypertrophy should not be forgotten. The more muscle mass you have on your body, you're going to have a better response to like a glycemic load. And so you're going to reduce your issues with diabetes. And then think about training. In younger years, train almost how you want to, because you're going to be able to heal and you're going to be able to make changes later on. However, as I'm aging, I may want to build my strength, but do I want to be doing heavy and risky sets of 1 and 2 and maxing out? Well, yes, you could with proper coaching. However, if you were doing more moderate weights and challenging the body there, we know that that's going to drive some strength gains, but it's also going to boost your hypertrophy. So sometimes you just have to make those decisions between the art and the science. So do you really want strength? Do you really want to pursue like a powerlifting approach with an 80-year-old grandma or great grandma? Maybe you do. There's nothing wrong with that. However, there's much to be said about training in that hypertrophy range, where you're going to be collecting maybe some benefits of hypertrophy and also driving strength. And you can do it with maybe a slightly safer approach. And again, just thinking about sort of that risk versus reward thought process, especially as your athletes and your trainees become a little bit more fragile and a little bit slower to heal. And this is sort of a reading list that I've been through in preparation for today's discussion / lecture. I don't love all these books. I don't believe every word from each of these books, but I do think there's great takeaways from the items on this list. To point out some of my favorites, I do like Gundry. He's on here a couple of times. Gundry's great. Circadian Code was great. That was one of the best books I've read in quite a while. Okay, maybe I like a lot of these maybe maybe they're on here for a reason, because I'm almost gonna start circling on each of these. But anyways, they're all pretty darn good. Doesn't mean I believe every word from all of them, and some of them are contradictory to one another. But these are some of the things on my reading list. Not mentioned today would be all of the science fiction type resources that are they're actually occurring now, and they're just in the works to be almost available mainstream in the near future. So artificial organs, whether they're synthetic or they are grown in genetically modified organisms, such as the pig is being modified to help us get some extra organs or replacement organs, not extra organs. We probably don't need two hearts in the same body, but maybe if that heart goes out, we can get possibly in the future a pig heart. Stem cells are being touted very highly by several parties, and then gene editing and gene therapy. I don't really understand it. Apparently, they're taking viruses and programming them to go in and change the DNA within our cells. It sounds very exciting, but it's over my head. And these items, if you saw my book list there, book Life Force is really kind of diving into all this incredible stuff that's right around the corner. So I think it's important not only that we do all those healthy habits. I didn't even talk about nutrition. I didn't even talk about sleep. But I think it's really important that we have all those awesome habits, that we're training accordingly, because you wouldn't want to miss out on some of the incredible medicine that is going to come around in the near future. And my wife found maybe a picture from the future of what she and I are going to look like. So maybe I look that good, maybe I don't even make it that far. But I'm going to try my best to get there in style. And I wanted to wish luck to all of you as well. May you age well and stay healthy. Enjoy it while you're at it. All right, take care.